Awesome. Welcome back, guys. Let me introduce to you our guest this week, who is just an absolute force of inspiration and positivity. We've got Philip Sessions on the podcast. Philip's from Greenville, South Carolina, a husband, girl dad, Christian, coach, author, podcast host, public speaker, and a communication strategist at speaking sessions. I feel like that's a whole lot of titles there, Philip. But that's not all. Philip's also a connector of people. He has a natural ability to inspire, motivate others to become the best version of themselves. He's a true powerhouse who can help you build a stronger mindset, to learn how to speak with more confidence, and teach you the strategies needed to communicate more effectively. Philip, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jacob, thanks for having me.
So Philip, the light's green. Let's get this baby gassed up. Give us a little bit of a rundown of, hey, how'd you get to where you are today?
And like you said, a lot of titles. So that didn't just happen overnight. We'll take this back a little bit, back in the day when I used to not talk. I used to not be confident in myself, and I would just sit there all by myself. One day I missed school in third grade. I came back the next day, and the nerd that I was, and the nerd that I probably still am today, said, "Hey, teacher, what did I miss?" She said, "I didn't know you were gone." And now I still don't know to this day whether she was actually joking or not, but that's how quiet I was, that the teacher most likely didn't even realize that I was gone one day. So I was this guy that would never talk, got into high school, finally started getting out of my shell, but I still wouldn't talk to women, which now married with a daughter, I'm not worried about talking to other women to be able to pick them up as a date or anything like that. But it was this continual thing where I was always trying to be better. And my speaking was one thing that held me back. And finally, as I got further into my career, where I still work at BMW Manufacturing full time, doing logistics automation, where I speak with robots more than I do with people, I still have to learn those people skills because I have to interact with the people that have to interact with those robots. And what I've found is that communication is the most challenging thing that anybody has. And so I decided that it's kind of a mission of mine now to be able to help people with that, because it was something that held me back so much, whether it was a personal relationship, whether it was an intimate relationship, whether it was a job promotion, getting money, getting out of the 9 to 5, it's held me back in some way, shape, or form. And so that's why I'm on that mission to help other people. And just through my own personal growth and development is where I've picked up all these other titles, being an author, being a podcaster, being a speaker, because I've seen what other people do. And I know that's part of that road to greatness. So I have developed myself to be all of these different titles, and it just feels like it's just me. But it does sound like a lot whenever you say it on paper or you say it right here on the intro of the podcast.
So growing up, quiet kid, what were some of those red lights, those roadblocks that you had to face to move from that quiet kid that the teacher had no clue you were missing from the classroom to who you are today? I imagine that didn't come natural for you.
No, it was definitely something I really had to push myself. And even still to this day, when I go to networking events, this is a good example I could use for like today. When you go to that networking event, you know you need to go to that networking event, but the natural thing is to hang out with the people that you know. But you're at the networking event to network and get to know new people. So you have to just force yourself to go talk to those new people. And that's essentially what I've done every step of the way to get through all those roadblocks when it came to my communication and really anything. I knew if it's something that I didn't necessarily want to do, but I knew in the back of my mind that I needed to do that, that if I just pushed through, I would do that and it would be that much better. Same thing with going and working out, eating healthy. It stinks in the moment. It's something that you don't really want to do unless you're a freak. There are some people that love to eat healthy all the time. I'm not one of those people. But when you do the thing that stinks in the moment, but it's better for the long term, that's what creates that growth. And so that's really what every time when I hit that obstacle, I think about that. What is this going to do for me long term? And it doesn't happen every time. I'm not perfect. There are times where I cave in. I say, you know what? That pressure, just doing that thing that I don't really want to do. It just doesn't feel good right now. And I do cave into the thing that's easy, that's natural. But that's what I do, is really just push myself to do that thing that's uncomfortable, because when I get uncomfortable, I know growth is right around the corner.
Yeah. So let's talk public speaking here for a little bit.
All right.
Specifically, let's talk about that 4-letter F word, right? That everybody's afraid of, fear. Probably not the one that came to everybody's mind first. Let me relay a story, because I was actually relaying it to my wife this week. I built sales teams for the last 20 plus years. And on the telecom side, we would run group interviews. So I would train sales managers how to go in, run a group interview. So they'd go walk in, whether it's 5 people, 20, some rooms we'd have 50 people in there. So we were teaching them how to speak in public. And I'm going to relay this story. I'm going to go back, and he'll probably kill me for sharing it on here, so I won't say his last name, but I was training this guy, Brian. And Brian, by the way, is one of the most gifted sales managers I've ever had the pleasure to work with. But so Brian goes in this room, and there's 20 some people in there, and he's in there for about 30 minutes, and he walks out and he says, "Hey, can you finish that in there?" And I say, "Yeah, no problem. Brian, tell me where you are in the process and I'll take it from there." And he says, "I'm at the beginning." And I'm sitting there for a second. I said, "What do you mean you're at the beginning? Like, what have you told them?" He says, "Nothing." I said, "Brian, you stood in front of this room for the last 30 minutes and just said absolutely nothing?" And he says, "Yes." Like, my mind is just blown, right? That nobody's left. And I'm thinking, these poor 20 people coming for a job interview, they're sitting in a room, and some guy's standing in front of the room, silent for almost 30 minutes. I walk in, I say, "Hey, I don't know what happened for the last 30 minutes, but you're not going to run me off like the last guy." And just, got some laughter and rolled through there. But I think that was there was an example. Brian obviously had this fear that overcame him, right? And we all grew up hearing, this piece of advice, basically to imagine the audience and their mighty tighty whities. But I've got a hunch that you probably have some better advice or some more applicable tips than just to think of folks in their underwear as we're standing at the top of the room.
Yes, definitely. That fear of public speaking is the number one question that everybody asks about, that I get asked a lot of times. So I have came up with what I call the speaking bars method to help with this, but then also help you with your speaking. Is oftentimes there's 2 things why we have that fear of public speaking. One is because we're afraid of what people are going to say about us. Of course, it's natural. We all think that no matter how much we have spoken, we still worry about what people think. And you think you, as a non-professional speaker or a speaking coach, is afraid of what people think? I'm a speaking coach, so I feel like people are going to be judging me more because I'm this speaking coach. And of course, with that comes, "Oh, Philip must just think he's all high and mighty. He's the best speaker out there." Well, no, I don't think that, but there still is that fear a little bit within me that somebody's going to judge me whenever I talk about how I'm a speaking coach if I don't go and speak well. So I have to be on top of my game for that. So the first thing is that we worry about ourselves. The second thing is that we really don't know what we're going to talk about. We have some ideas, we probably didn't prep for it, or we just think we're going to talk about a certain thing and it's just going to work out. You know it very well in the sales game. If you just go and simply talk about a product and you have no plan for that customer, or you don't guide them to where that product can help them and overcome that problem they have and fix it and be that solution for them, then it's not going to go well. You're most likely not going to get the sale. And now when we're speaking, we're not necessarily trying to sell per se, but there are often times that we're selling within that. So we have to know where we're trying to take the customer. So this is where this whole speaking bars method comes in. So it's an acronym, the bars part, not the speaking. So that would be a very long acronym. So the bars: begin with the end in mind. So where is this end goal? Where are you trying to go with your speech in the first place? Because if you don't know where you're trying to go, you don't know how to start. You don't know where to take that presentation. And also, as maybe you get starstruck, the lights are in your eyes, you forget everything. at least you can know where you're trying to end that speech at or where you're trying to end that conversation at. So begin with that end in mind, and then have that audience awareness and understanding. A lot of times we get nervous because we don't really know who we're speaking to. So if we know who our audience is and we understand who they are, we can start speaking to them, and we can start speaking in a way that they can understand versus just trying to guess at it, which is another reason why we would be afraid. And then remember, it's not about you. This is a big part of being able to get over that fear, because you need to remember it's not about you. When we focus on ourselves is when we are most fearful, when our speeches are really the worst, because people can tell when you're up there on stage to speak for yourself or if you're up there to speak for them and help them out. So remember that it's not about you. It's about your audience. And then finally, serve. This is all about intentionality. If you are not there serving your audience and trying to give them as much information as possible, you're going to fall flat. Yes, you may be a great speaker. Yes, you may say some great things, but if you're there to serve yourself at the end of the day, your audience won't listen to you. Everybody knows you're in business. You're there to make money. You have a product or service that probably can help them. But if you're not willing to give away some information for free, if you're not willing to help educate that audience and serve them, you won't be served in return. It's kind of like the law of reciprocity. If you're not willing to be that giver first, you're not going to get anything in return. And of course, the caveat there is that we're not trying to give so we can get, but we're just giving out of the kindness of our heart. So make sure that you're serving in that message. So begin with the end in mind, audience awareness and understanding. Remember, it's not about you, it's about them, and serve.
Hey, we got to get you spitting bars like Jay-Z. At least that's how it's now it's gonna stick in my head that way anyways.
Exactly.
So,
That was the whole pun on it, man. You know, spitting bars, speaking bars, same thing.
yeah, I love it. Yeah. So there's two big things that I've always stressed when I'm out training sales teams around the country. Yeah, and I'd like to take just a little bit of time, dive into these two topics as it pertains, and really just get your feedback on it. That first one is nonverbal speaking, right? Those nonverbal communication skills. Yeah, if I can nerd out for a second, so my background is in NLP, so the nonverbals have always been king for what I go in and I train folks on. I guess it's a little bit of God's timing, because I actually just dropped a post this morning in a couple of groups giving away 10 tips, right, on matching, mirroring, body language, pacing in your speech patterns, even breathing, gestures, language patterns, all of these things. What have you seen? And man, maybe it's even the negatives where people really struggled here, but you were able to get them to see that struggle, to see, hey, they were failing in the nonverbal part of what they were doing. And get them to actually see that's probably the hardest part, at least. That's what I find, because they don't see that in themselves. And then to take action to actually improve it. And I ask this because, so many sales guys come back and they're telling their sales manager, hey, I said exactly what you told me to say. The problem is they didn't say it how the sales manager said it, or even if they got the voice inflection down, man, the guy's running around, he's got his hand clear above his head and he's saying, hey, it's a very low price. So he's sending mixed nonverbal communication. So if you could unpack that a little bit and walk through, hey, how do you coach folks through that? What are some best steps? What do you have for us?
Yeah, and I'll say real quick that I think a lot of times this is missed when it comes to sales training. We have this whole script. You're supposed to say the script its exact way and make sure it's not robotic. That's about the only thing you get when it comes to the sales training most of the time. But I would say, yes, that nonverbal piece is the most important thing ever. And a lot of my experience has been with people where they don't use that vocal variation, or where they don't vary their voice and maybe get a little bit higher pitch and a little bit deeper. They'll sit there and they're very monotone. And one example I can think of is where people just, man, I'm just really excited today. This has been a really great day. I just closed a really big sale. my business is doing the best it's ever done. It's like, really? You don't sound excited at all. Like, you just one tone,
Monotone.
that's it.
Yeah.
Your face is just flat. There's no expression of joy in that at all. So that is very deceptive. It's very confusing for the customer if you're trying to say that, oh, this is the best product. We really love this product, or I know we can help you out with this solution. I think we can help you out here today. If you want to be helped out, yeah, it's a big thing. Yes, the tone of your voice, but if you're watching this video, you'll see my face changed as well. But as you showed, Jacob, where like you put your hand way up high, oh, this low price, but it's way above my head. Okay, that is confusing. So yes, you need to make sure that what you're doing with your body matches what you're actually saying. I'll give another example of this. If you tell your wife or your husband and you say, hey, I love you, do you think they really feel that? While they know, yes, okay, I know my wife or my husband loves me. If you just say, yeah, hey, love you, they just got to do that every single day. Eventually they'd start questioning, what's going on? Is there something going on in our marriage? Did I do something wrong? And they start getting worried. And this is the same thing with your potential client, your potential customer. If you say it in a certain way that doesn't match with what your product or service will do for them, it'll confuse them. And then they'll be like, well, I'm not sure about this. Maybe that Jacob guy or the Philip guy, they don't really know what they're talking about. Or maybe their product really doesn't do what they say it's supposed to do. And that's why a lot of people will tell you that you need to believe in your product, because when you believe in something, you have that much more passion for it. You're that much more excited about it. You're going to show it in your body language, and you're going to show it in the way you come up with your tone of voice and everything. So I'm not sure if I exactly answered that question for you, but a statistic, I believe it's about 84% of our speaking is actually nonverbal. So most of that being body language, and then really even within the tonality of our voice. And it's not the words. The words only have so much substance to them. Going back to our love example, or you can insert another example. Those words, whether you say them or not, you had to say them, but the way you say them and how you look when you say them matter that much more, and put that much more emphasis on them. Or another example real quick, a text message. How many times, and I'm raising my hand here, have you read a text message and you read too far into it? You thought that text message meant something completely different because in your mind, you pictured the way this person was going to be. Maybe it's how you thought your spouse was responding to the way that you messaged them about something, and now they're upset with you. But really, they were just like, oh, I wish you could have gotten that done. But you're thinking, oh my gosh, why did you not get that done? And they're freaking out on you. So think about that. And now take it to when you're actually speaking to somebody in person. Those words, while they are exactly the same, they mean something completely different based on your body language and tone of voice.
No, for sure. Yeah. I always say I was blessed. My first sales job, back 2001. I'm dating myself a little bit here, but that's okay. I had a great sales trainer, a guy named Mike Germano, and he was huge, right? Every word that you said had a motion and action, something with it. And part of the training was you weren't allowed to go talk to a potential customer until you could do your entire sales pitch with no words. So you would literally stand in front of the room. We're on a podcast, so they can't see this, but if they're watching, I can still today, 20 years later, I have it down. Every single motion to the entire sales pitch. And I always thought, hey, that was greatness. I didn't get it at the time. It was almost just drilled into me, if you will. But it set me on a path to understand more. Like, hey, why did we snap my pen forward at them? And understanding that psychology behind that. And that's where I said, man, I could nerd out on this for the next 3 days probably. And then that voice inflection, we were always taught, and I've just relayed this through the years, just a simple sentence, where it says, I didn't kick my dog. It wasn't me, it was you, Philip, right? I didn't kick my dog. I hit him. I didn't kick my dog. It was your dog. I didn't kick my dog. It was the cat. Yeah. So to your point, based on where we stress any word, it completely changes how, the person that we're communicating hears that. So I dig that, completely. A wise guy once told me that, even as a leader, it's not our job. It's not the person we're speaking to or communicating. It's not their job to understand. It's our job to be understood as the one communicating. Just that ownership piece, it always changed, my thought process on, hey, how am I delivering? What am I speaking on? And really, once you own it, you can change it. If you don't own it, there's no change. That second thing that, I'm passionate about, and I think you probably are as well, teaching guys to speak on stages, public speaking, that type of deal, is storytelling. One of the very first things I do, right, when I go into a company is I deconstruct that sales pitch. I'm actually a guy that absolutely hates sales pitches. From the road. We put together what I call kind of a spine, and the big piece of that is we implement what we call the core story, where hey, it's basically a technique that involves developing a compelling story that communicates that company's unique selling proposition. So, what is it that separates it? Why is it different than everything else in the marketplace? And let's face it, since cavemen, right, from the cavemen to the Egyptians to Jesus, like we've been communicating in stories throughout time. Even guys that are in the mission field now are overseas, and they have to communicate in pictures or stories, or they're nonverbals, because there's a language gap in that barrier there. I'm a firm believer that those stories and storytelling is king in everything that you do. Hey, how are you teaching that simply? Because I know that can be daunting for a lot of people, right? Like, oh man, I got to come up with a story now. And so how are you teaching that to break down, construct that story simply so they can run with it?
Man, this is a great question. And I want to start off with a quote: facts tell and stories sell. Yes, you need to tell those facts, but the thing is, back them up with stories. And you and I have both actually been doing this whole podcast where we'll make a point, but then we'll use a story or an analogy to be able to back up that point and to really drive that point home as well. That way we can make sure that people can relate with it and understand that. And so that's what I do with my clients, is help them really break down what stories make sense for them. I wouldn't go out and talk about cars and try and relate with somebody with cars, because I'm not a car person. Yes, I work at a BMW manufacturing facility. There's cars there, obviously, but I don't know cars very well, so I can't talk about that. I don't have experiences with cars. So I use experiences that I have, and I try and know the other person's background, which is all part of prospecting, getting to know your prospect there and be able to ask them questions. So that way you can know little things they like. Oh, you have little Johnny and Sally, your kids there. You got your wife Janice over here, and you can start. Oh, my wife and I, we love to go with our daughter over here to this park, or da da da. You just start talking about these things and having these little stories. One, to just be able to relate with them when you're building that rapport. But as you're going into talking about your product or service, you go and talk about experiences that either you've personally had with that. So telling the story behind that, about how before you had this product or service, what that was like, and then now that you have that product or service, what it is like now. And so really sharing that, or perhaps you're helping bring in a story that would relate to them. So I don't want to say make up stories, but if you want to mold and stretch your story a little bit to maybe include them within that story, or make it where they could see themselves in the story, that's going to be a great way as well. Let's take a real estate salesperson, for example. They don't live in that house, but you can sit there and kind of paint the story. Couldn't you imagine here in this big 1 acre backyard, how you could have a play set here and a trampoline, and you could just watch your kids out there playing and having a great time, and they're going to have friends over. And now, because maybe the parents, they're really about a home life. They want their kids to be at home all the time. They want to be able to watch over them, and they like having people over so you can talk about that. And it's just a great big backyard, so you can host people over and you can bring other kids over, so your kids and your family can all be here. And now you're painting a picture. It's still a story. It's a made up story, but you've painted this picture for them to be able to see that this house would be great for us because of these things. But you've taken what you know about them and what you've prospected on them, in fact, found about them from the beginning, and using that to paint this story for them, which then really sells them. Because at the end of the day, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that's 2,000 square feet, or how many ever square feet with a 1 acre backyard. Okay, cool. That's the same as us just telling you. We're not trying to use any body language or anything descriptive. So then you come in with that story and you really paint that picture in their mind so they can start seeing how, in this case, the house will fit into their life, but you do the same thing with your product or service. And so that's what I do with my clients, is really take their experiences, what their product or service is, and help them be able to mold some stories that they can take as more canned stories, and then also talk to them about some tactics and tricks to be able to get that information from their potential prospect or their audience that they're going to speak to, and be able to speak in a way that they would relate to that story.
Yeah, I think there's your A in bars, right? Where you have to know that audience.
Exactly.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking like, man, this guy read Zig Ziglar. Yeah, Zig had a great story when he first moved from little old Yazoo City, Mississippi, to big old Dallas, Texas. He tells his wife, hey, you go find the house. He says, I don't care. Yeah, I just need a swimming pool. Outside of the swimming pool, you get whatever you want, honey. And so she goes. She says, hey, well, honey, what's the budget? He says, well, $100,000. No problem. And so his wife goes with the realtor, and the realtor asks her, hey, what is it that you want? What is it that your husband wants? And so she's got these things, and they're going around to the house. They go to this first house, and it's like $50,000, and and not a great part of Dallas, by the way. And so they're there. He's walking through that, and Zig says, "I'm scratching my head, wondering what am I doing in this dump? Why am I here?" And the realtor says, "Hey, I got one more house to show you." So he takes Zig, and he calls her the redhead, takes her to the house, and they're walking through this house, and the way that he's explaining this house, the first one, he was just like, hey, take a look around. You got any questions, let me know. They walk into this next house, and as you said, they're painting, this huge open floor plan, how you can entertain, have everybody here, this patio. And, hey, for the kids, we got the swing set out back, and we got these two, beautiful, huge trees. You'll be able to watch grow up, and they start going through the house. He shows them the swimming pool. So that's the one thing Zig had to have. So then they get to, the bathroom, and, the master bathroom. They're in there. They've got this closet, this big walk-in closet, and he's telling her where all her shoes are going to go and her dresses. And right there's the hot tub in the thing. It's already bubbling, candles lit, rose petals on the thing. And Zig says, uh-oh. He says, I didn't even have to know the price. My wife bought this house. And so when they got the price, and the price is almost twice the budget. And he says, he told the joke for years that, his wife spent $180,000 on a hot tub and rose petals, and he threw the rest of the house in. So, so I love that analogy, because it so much is, right? It's getting your audience so invested in that story that they can taste, feel, sense every aspect of it. So that's where I'm passionate about teaching that, and really building the sales process around that. Because frankly, it takes all the selling out, right? They're almost begging you to do business at that point. Like, you can't leave here. Because in their mind, they've already taken a bite out of that. So they've tasted it, smelled it, dreamed of it at that point. So do you find when you're coaching guys that is that's easy for them to develop them stories, or do you come across a lot of friction where they're just unsure how to build those out? What does that look like for you?
There's a lot more friction than the ease of it. And I've personally struggled with this as well, because a lot of times what we think the great stories are those heroic stories where you're the in the rags, we're in jail and you came out, or you're a druggie, whatever, and you came out and you cleaned up and you became this bazillionaire. And those are the amazing stories that everybody wants to hear about. But I was just normal person, had a good home life, and I decided I was going to do something for myself, and maybe I've done a little bit. Maybe I haven't become this bazillionaire or anything like that, but I've done well for myself. And they think that that's not a great story to share. But the thing is, it is a good story to share because there's other people that are just like you that didn't have that rags to riches story. So that's where I see the hardest part is really just realizing that they do have stories worth sharing.
So they're stuck on the drama rather than communicating and relating to folks that are just like them. So they skip right over their audience because they're not dramatic enough, or their past isn't dramatic enough.
Exactly.
I could see that. What are some of the common mistakes? And I'm going to call them red lights again, that people make, Philip, when they're given a public speech, and how can they be avoided? So that way, hey, they can hit those green lights and not get hung up instead.
Well, one, they are stuck inside their own heads. They think that they're not going to be good enough, that they shouldn't be there to speak, and maybe they're not ready to speak. If you're being asked to speak on stage, then that means you're ready, that somebody believes in you, and they believe in you enough to put them on put you on their stage rather. So you need to, first of all, get out of your own head, because going back to the speaking bars method, remember, it's not about you, it's about them. So get out of your own head and make sure that you're serving that audience. As long as you are remembering them, keeping them in mind, and serving them, that message, it won't be terrible. I won't say it will be amazing, because we all need to practice. We all have those bad speeches from time to time that do come up, but it'll be a lot better than if you stay in your own head and you focus on that. And the other one really is just thinking that I can wing it, or just having no plan with that message. And so those are really the two things that I see a lot of people do, especially first time speakers. They think, I'll just go up there and wing it. No big deal. I'll figure it out when I get there. Oof. That's rough. Unless if you're very conversational. I say, Jacob, if you hadn't really been on stages, you probably could get up there and do it, because you've got a lot of experience. You're very good at conversations. You're very good at telling stories. You probably could just get up there and not do it. But if you've never done a speech, if you're not a person that's extroverted, that can have normal conversations, that perhaps even does podcasts, I think it's a huge thing to help you with your speaking on stages, then you're going to need to practice that. So those are really the two big red lights that I see a lot of times. Another one kind of goes back to being in your own head. Most people think that they need to focus on not having all the ums and ahs. Most speakers will still have the ums and ahs in there. And you'll hear it all the time on podcasts. I'm sure you've heard both of us saying this here on the podcast with the ums and ahs. The thing is, those are minor things. Unless if you're saying it every single other word, I wouldn't worry about that so much. Of course, work to clean it up, but I wouldn't worry about that as much as that vocal variety and the body language. Those things are going to be much more impactful and beneficial to help your speech. So I guess the three things for you there. The one kind of goes back into the first, or that last one kind of goes back to the first, with getting out of your own mind, but focusing on what you say, and all the ums and ahs is a very minor detail that you shouldn't let hold you back, because that message is much more important than the ums and ahs. They're not going to distract people as much as you think they are.
Yeah, see, I grew up in the Midwest, and our version of that and ah is So
Yes.
it's like constantly, and I didn't realize it, and somebody had pointed it out to me. And for many years, it actually works great in sales, because Yeah, people must have just thought I was just checking to see if they were with me still, because I just dropped a and I would get a yes. So it kind of worked in my favor until I was in other settings and using it. And I had a guy even tell me one time, he says, "No, I don't know, because that's all I hear." And it was and it was actually, it was like, oh, there's a sword in my side, but it's what I needed. Like, I needed to hear that, so that way I became aware of it. It's funny because then I switched and I still use the ums and the uhs in there. And I was listening to I don't know, some news station, and even those news anchors, I think it was Larry King, one of the greatest interviewers there ever was. And all I could hear was his ums and ahs, because that's where my focus was at the time. So to me, that was actually a little bit freeing, because I thought, hey, here's this guy that this is what he does for a living. He communicates in front of the whole world. And, he's crash landing that thing. So it was freeing for me.
Well, those impromptu speeches are a lot harder. I'll call it impromptu speech. I wouldn't necessarily say a podcast is a speech, but doing this impromptu speaking is definitely something that's harder to do, the ums and ahs. And another one, because you mentioned, another one people like to do that I hear a lot is right. So make a statement and it'll be like, right, at the end of it. That's another one that it was really a filler word, because you're trying to almost get that acknowledgement without somebody saying, yeah, I agree, or anything like that. You kind of maybe a little head nod or something, but before they go on, it's the same thing as the,
Yeah. And what I found in that, and that goes completely back to your bars again, is they showed up more when I was winging it. If I had prepared well, or if it's something I have done many times, they completely disappear. So when I had mastery of what my subject was and who I was delivering it to, magically all those filler words were out the window. So it just really made me decide, hey, I've got to prepare in those things. And then I'm thinking, you also must know my pastor, because you talked about, hey, not knowing where you're going. We always tell the joke, because he'll get up on Sunday morning, he'll say, hey, we got 3 points today. 45 minutes later, we're still on point 1. And he looks up and he says, oh, I guess we're going to have to write these other 2 points down. So I don't think he's ever landed a plane in the 15 years that we've known him. So
that's funny.
Yeah, let's talk coaching a little bit, Philip. Yeah, I know that's one of the things that you do there. And for our listeners, by the way, if you're looking to join a community, that values learning about public speaking, then you absolutely got to check out Philip's Facebook group. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Speaking with Confidence, correct?
Yeah, that's the free one.
Yeah, so it's so a free community, right, with hundreds of like-minded folks who are just there. Trying to get better, gain more confidence, hone those skills, right? And I can't think of a better place, than to rub shoulders with couple hundred other folks that are looking to do that same thing. I love that you put together that place, and I know you've got some other coaching things as well that aren't free, but I love that you did put together, hey, here's a safe place where folks can explore, if you will, get some value. And not everybody does that. I mean, heck, I see you giving away, free game daily on your social media outlets. And I meet a lot of folks, I run into, and they're gifted. They got tons of value to give, but they're afraid. They're afraid of giving away that secret sauce, if you will. I'm a big believer, right, in the value of giving. And man, frankly, I think it's underrated. So I'm a little curious, how that became such a part of who you are, that, hey, yes, I'm going to coach and I'm going to have these things, but I'm also going to provide, some free value to folks out there to improve where they are.
I always felt like that little guy really is where that started from. I always felt that I wanted the hand up, if you will, somebody to reach down and help me get up. I was still willing to do that work, but there never seemed to be that hand to come to me. And there has been over time now, but especially when I first was starting, it didn't really feel that way. It felt like everybody wanted to keep things to themselves. They found the success, and I'll say the quotes, and they didn't want to share that secret. And I wanted to make sure I could help people. And I know at the end of the day, whether or not I get paid tons of money to do what I do, I'm doing this to be able to help other people. And we talked offline a lot about the faith and the Great Commission and things like that. And that's an important thing. And my faith in God, I know that things will be taken care of one way or another. Whether I do get paid lots of money while I'm here on this earth to be able to do cool things and be able to give back or not, that's fine. I've got my faith in God, and that's the ultimate thing. But I want to really be able to help people out. I know there's a lot of people that they want that help. They need that help, but they just don't have the financial means to do that. So why not give a lot of that away? And not to mention, if I'm giving a lot of information away, people are going to know, okay, Philip knows what he's talking about, versus trying to keep this all mysterious. And, oh, you got to get into my $9.97 course to be able to get all the information, because I'm going to give you one of 3 steps. And these other 2 are going to help you, which, by the way, those other 2 steps usually never help or they barely help. That's not going to get you there. So I just want to be able to help empower people to be able to actually take some action. And if they want some more applicable steps and be able to kind of have more of a help you along the journey, then that's where they come with me. They don't necessarily learn a lot of extra. I do try and pour more intention into them, those that do become clients, but really it's just more of me giving them time and attention and being more specific to what it is that they're trying to do versus that free content. So that's really kind of where you get the premium, where the pay comes in. But I really just want to be able to give back and be able to arm people with that information so they could go out and apply it for themselves and be able to be better, because communication impacts us in every area of our life.
Yes, no, I get it. I interview folks sometimes, and one of the things you hear over and over, somebody now and again will just say, "I'm not a people person." And I'm always dumbfounded. I think, well, you better learn to be one real quick. So, even like you said at the top of the call or top of the podcast here, right, where you said, hey, I'm communicating with robots. Yeah. But eventually you got to communicate with the people that are communicating with the robots. Mm-hmm. So and I'm just, if people understand that are listening, every single path you go in life. Yeah, and I'm a firm believer God just created us this way, that we're not to be in isolation. We need to learn to communicate with other human beings. There's no way you can be successful outside of that. So, going back to your coaching, so who is your ideal client? Like, who is it that would say, hey, put their hand up and say, man, I need to work with Philip, because this is what I'm trying to do in my career?
My ideal client, really, I'm kind of business agnostic, so I can really help anybody. It is a struggle. I focus on the trades industry because those are the people that are very smart with their hands and they have all this knowledge in their head, but a lot of times it's hard to transfer that knowledge to somebody else within their company, or also just to be able to help the client understand that. And so a lot of times, especially nowadays, we're seeing the downtrend in people that go to trade schools and trades industries, and this uptick in people that are educated. And not to say that tradespeople are dumb, it's just that they're not educated. So sometimes speaking to those that are more educated is a little bit more difficult. And how do you explain when you have a $30,000 project that you say is only going to take you a week? It's like, it's $30,000, but it's only a week. That's a lot of money. And well, yeah, $30,000 isn't anything. Like, how do you go about explaining some of that? How do you explain what makes you different and everything? So I'm focused on that trades industry, but I'm really want to help anybody that wants help with their communication. It can see that it can help them within their life, within their business, within any area that they need that help with and are willing to make a change. That's really who I'm going after.
Yeah. So if you're listening, by the way, Philip's talking about you. I say that I get that completely. I work with small business owners all the time, and most of them were technicians, right? It was a guy,
Mm-hmm.
hey, he was a plumber, and he was a gifted plumber, and he turned around and launched his own plumbing company. But then he didn't understand, hey, how do I talk to employees? How do I
Yeah.
build a sales team? How do I get sales? Hey, how do I do these things? And so when I view that kind of with what you're doing, it makes complete sense to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that is 99.9% of small business owners.
Yeah.
They were a technician that now runs the company, and they're missing the other aspects, that they need to launch into further success. So
Yeah.
I
So
think
it's amazing how people skills really impact your income.
yes, yeah. I mean, everything. I mean, frankly,
Yeah.
it's I'm even thinking the stay-at-home, housewife right now. Like she
Yeah.
needs to learn how to communicate better with the kids. Communicate
Mm-hmm.
better. Husbands, wives. I mean, it is literally, and that's why I say that tongue in cheek. If you're listening, Philip's saying you're his ideal client. You just don't know it yet. So, so I love that. Yeah. So a funny story. As we're thinking there, and I was looking through it, you had this post, not long ago about building your own stage, and
Mm-hmm.
and it brought up a funny story. I was thinking about it earlier today, and I was running sales teams, and I told this VP one time that hey, I've got this dream. I had this dream to speak from a stage, and actually, it probably goes back to me as a kid watching the televangelists. I mean, man, I'm sure I'm glad, by the way, that I didn't go that route. I might have Benny Hinned myself into HE double hockey sticks. Because at that time as a kid, man, I was he had the nice suit, the chair. Man, he had the golden chair, all that stuff. So I thought it was cool. Yeah. So at first I thought, man, I just want to be a televangelist. Mom told me I couldn't do that, by the way. So thanks, Mom. But anyhow, So I'm telling this VP one time, like, man, yeah, I'd love to speak on a stage. And about a year and a half later, they were launching some new teams, here locally in Dallas. So I go in to train, these teams, and I walk in. They've got this new office. And in that office, they've got basically stadium seating. They've got a bunch of chairs set up. And
nice.
This VP, he actually built a stage, this little, I don't know, about 8-inch, platform off the ground, carpeted it, the whole nine. And I thought, like, how awesome is this? Like, who does this? Like he remembered, some fly by night conversation, a year and a half prior. He literally built this stage, and I come in, and it's like the greatest thing. I know it was not, some, big production, but I'll tell you what, I felt like I was some movie star, somebody, super famous on that stage, teaching those sales teams, what to do. And so can you hit on, I know that doesn't really have to go just what brought to mind. It had to go with building your own stage, because maybe it's not an actual stage, but a platform. But can you talk about that and why that was important for you? Build your own stage versus sitting around waiting for somebody to invite you to their event to speak on their stage.
So we think sometimes this is also said in another way, like building your own table versus like having a seat at the table. We hear that a lot of times with these gurus, these people that speak on stages that talk about, if there's not a seat at the table, make one. Well, sometimes you just can't make one. Maybe you don't have that opportunity. You don't have the money to invest in that. You can't get around that group of people for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a gated community. So go build your own table, go build your own stage instead. And that's really what I mean and meant behind it, is that I didn't have the opportunity yet to be able to go be on somebody else's stage, but I wanted to be on a stage. So rather than sitting back and pouting or just waiting, I was going to take some action on that, because that's how life is. If we take action, results come from that. But very few times, there may be a time or two where all of a sudden you close a deal just because you happen to be there. Maybe you were at the office, you answered the phone, and somebody was wanting something right then and there, and you were able to sell that. That's great. Those are amazing times when that happens. but that hardly ever happens. So you have to take that action. And that's what I meant by building that stage. I wanted to start speaking on stages. So I built that stage. So one, I could say I was on a stage, but two, then that shows to those people that have those stages or have that table that I want to be at, that, you know what? Philip is willing to put his self on the line. He put himself out there. We want to give him a chance, perhaps. And it did happen, not on necessarily the stages that I was looking at just yet, but it started happening because I was willing to put myself out there and put my name on the line. And that's oftentimes why people aren't inviting you to their stage or their table, because they're not sure if you're ready for that yet. Because that is something that is, it's something, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this, but it's something that is sought after. A lot of people want to be around those areas, and so they have to protect themselves. They have to guard themselves. So show them that you can. Don't just go up there and ask for it. Yes, you still should. You should show reasons why you need to be there, but go build that stage too, to show them without asking them and telling them why you should be there. Go show them. Take action on what you want to do, because, like I said, you don't have to go and be on somebody else's stage. Just be on stage. You can go build your own. Sounds a little bit easier to me. It is scary, but it's going to get you a lot further by going and taking action on what you want to do.
And I love the heart behind that. It's simple, right? Where results always seem to show up after you take action.
Yeah.
So, hopefully folks don't miss that. So Philip, thanks for hopping on today, spending time, dropping knowledge on the podcast. What is the best way for folks to find you if they wanted to get in touch?
You can find me on Facebook at The Real Philip Sessions, or you can go to my website, speakingsessions.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well at Philip Sessions. And that's Philip with one L.
Awesome. So, any parting shots, Phillips, last pieces of advice before we get out of here?
I just want to bring back up that last little point, that all those titles, you mentioned at the very beginning about all the titles that I had, that all was just from taking action one thing at a time. And now all these titles that I happen to have, it seems like it's a lot, but I focused on one thing at a time. Did the podcast, decided to write a book, decided to get married, decided to have a kid. All were just one action or multiple actions to be able to make that thing happen. But it was focused on one thing at a time. And now I have a ton of different titles. So if you are that person that is on the fence about doing something and you want to live this big life and you have all these goals, start with the one goal first. And if it's communication, I'd be happy to help you out. If it's sales, I know Jacob can help you out there.
Awesome. Guys, if you're looking for a book, right, that can help you take action on the things in life that you want to go after. So those goals, those things that, hey, that one thing that Philip's talking about, taking action here, then you've got to check out his book, Mindset Over Motivation. You can get it on his website. It's on Amazon as well. So it's a game changer. It's going to help you break down barriers and go after your dreams. And for our listeners, we know you're here to avoid those red lights. Philip's book's going to show you how to cruise through green light after green light after green light. And last but not least, don't forget to tune into his podcast, Speaking Sessions. Each episode's going to feature interviews with leaders, business owners at the top of their game and speaking, communicating with teams and audiences of all sizes. So like I said, you're listening, you are his ideal client. We can all learn to communicate better. So you'll learn on his podcast, how to take that communication and those skills to the next level. So join his community on Facebook, read his book, tune into his podcast. Trust me, you won't regret it. Guys, until next time, the light's green. So let's go.